I'm Daniel Lake, and I'm the kind of guy who can troubleshoot your wireless router in 5 minutes, but apparently couldn't troubleshoot my own marriage in 15 years. 43 years old, slightly overweight, with the kind of receding hairline that makes me look distinguished in dim lighting and defeated in fluorescent office hell. I fix computers for a living, which means I spend most of my day explaining to people why turning it off and on again actually works, but nothing could have prepared me for what I found on that rainy Tuesday evening in October. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My wife Olivia had been acting strange for months. The woman who used to greet me at the door with a kiss now barely looked up from her phone when I walked in. Olivia Lake, formerly Olivia Hartwell, came from what her mother liked to call good breeding, which apparently meant having enough money to look down on everyone else while pretending to be charitable about it. She worked at Morrison & Associates, a high-end advertising agency downtown, where she rubbed shoulders with the kind of people who wore $1,000 suits and drove cars that cost more than my annual salary. I should have seen the signs earlier, but I was too busy being the reliable husband, the one who paid the mortgage on time and remembered to take out the trash. "Girls' night again?" I asked that Tuesday, watching her apply lipstick in the hallway mirror. She was wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, and her perfume was different, something expensive and sultry that definitely wasn't the vanilla scent she'd worn for years. She mumbled, not really looking at me. "Don't wait up." After she left, I sat in our living room, surrounded by the life we'd built together. Wedding photos on the mantel, her books mixed with mine on the shelves, the couch we'd picked out together 3 years ago. Everything looked normal, but something felt fundamentally wrong. That's when I noticed her laptop was still open on the kitchen counter. Now, I'm not proud of what I did next, but 15 years of marriage gives you certain privileges, right? We'd always shared passwords, always been open about our devices. At least, I thought we had. Her email was open, and there it was. A thread of messages that made my stomach drop like I'd just stepped off a cliff. "Can't wait to feel your hands on me again. Daniel's working late Thursday. Come over around 8. I'll be wearing that red thing you like." The sender, Graham Ryder, her boss. The smug bastard with the perfectly styled gray hair and the Porsche Cayenne who'd shaken my hand at the company Christmas party while apparently planning to sleep with my wife. I scrolled up, my hands shaking. The messages went back months. Detailed, explicit, devastating. Plans for hotel rooms, descriptions of what they wanted to do to each other, and worst of all, jokes about me. "Poor Daniel probably thinks I'm at book club," she'd written. "If only he knew his boring little wife had such expensive tastes." Graham's response: "Don't worry about him. Once you're ready to upgrade, I'll make sure you're taken care of. A woman like you deserves better than some IT nerd who shops at Target." I sat there for an hour, reading every message, screenshotting everything. My marriage wasn't just over, it had been a joke for months. But as the initial shock wore off, something else took its place, something cold and calculating. If Olivia wanted to play games, I was about to show her that the boring IT nerd knew a few tricks of his own. The next morning, Olivia acted like nothing had happened. She made her usual Greek yogurt and granola breakfast, kissed my cheek absently, and headed off to work in her BMW, the one I'd co-signed for because her credit wasn't quite good enough on her own. I called in sick and spent the day planning. First, I created a secure folder on my personal laptop and organized all the screenshots by date. Then I made copies on 3 different cloud services and a physical backup drive. If this was going to get ugly, I wanted documentation. Next, I did what I do best. I investigated. Graham Ryder, it turned out, was married to a woman named Patricia, a prominent socialite who served on several charity boards. They had 2 teenage kids and lived in a mansion in Cherry Hills Village. Graham drove that Porsche, but Patricia drove a Tesla and had her own Instagram account with 30,000 followers. I spent hours studying their social media, learning their routines, their friends, their vulnerabilities. Graham posted regularly about his perfect family and his blessed life. Patricia shared inspirational quotes about loyalty and trust. My neighbor Pete knocked on my door around noon. Pete Kowalski, ex-Denver police detective, now retired and spending his days working on his classic Camaro. He was the kind of guy who noticed everything and asked uncomfortable questions. "You look like hell, Danny," he said, inviting himself in. "Olivia's car was gone awful late last night." Pete had been suspicious of Olivia for months. He'd mentioned seeing her car in places it shouldn't be, noticed when she claimed to be one place, but her vehicle was somewhere else entirely. "She's having an affair," I said simply. Pete nodded like he'd been expecting this. "You got proof?" I showed him some of the tamer screenshots. Pete whistled low. This Graham guy, he's got a lot to lose, Pete observed. High-profile job, society wife, reputation. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time for some consequences. Pete grinned. You need help, you know where to find me. That afternoon, I drove to Graham's office building. Morrison and Associates occupied 3 floors of a gleaming downtown tower. I sat in the parking garage for an hour, watching. Graham's Porsche was in a reserved spot near the elevator. Olivia's BMW was 2 spots over. At 5:30, they came down together, not touching, but walking close, talking intimately. Graham opened Olivia's car door for her, his hand lingering on her lower back. She smiled up at him in a way she hadn't smiled at me in years. They drove off in separate directions, but I knew from the messages that they were meeting at the Marriott downtown. Room 412. Graham had texted her the details that morning. I went home and started making phone calls. Thursday evening came, and Olivia announced she was going to her book club. What are you reading this month? I asked casually. She paused for just a moment too long. It's that new thriller everyone's talking about. Gone Girl. Didn't your book club read that 2 years ago? Another pause. This is a different book club. New members. I nodded and smiled. Have fun, honey. After she left, I put my plan into motion. First, I sent an anonymous email to Patricia Ryder from a burner account I'd created. The subject line was simple. Your husband is not who you think he is. The email contained a selection of Graham's messages to my wife, including the ones where he bragged about his stamina and made crude jokes about what he wanted to do to her. I included the hotel receipts I'd found in his company credit card statements, public records if you knew where to look. Then I sent a similar email to Morrison and Associates' HR department. Sexual harassment in the workplace, abuse of power, using company resources for personal affairs. I attached documentation showing Graham had charged several hotel stays to the company card on days when he was supposedly meeting clients, but was actually meeting my wife. Finally, I sent copies to Olivia's parents. Richard and Margaret Hartwell lived in a sprawling house in Greenwood Village and had never quite approved of their daughter marrying beneath her station. They were old-school Episcopalians who believed in appearances, reputation, and family honor above all else. The email I sent them was more detailed. I included screenshots of Olivia discussing how she planned to trade up from her current husband, how she laughed about my job and my appearance, how she and Graham mocked our modest house and my lack of sophistication. Then I sat back and waited. My phone started ringing at 11:47 p.m. Daniel? Olivia's voice was shaking. We need to talk. Now. I'm in bed, honey. How was book club? Don't play games with me. I know what you did. I have no idea what you're talking about. Did something happen? The silence stretched out. Then, I'm coming home. She walked in 20 minutes later, her face flushed, her hair disheveled. She'd been crying. My parents called, she said. They got some kind of email with private messages. I sat up in bed, doing my best to look confused and concerned. What kind of messages? You know exactly what kind. Her voice was getting stronger, angrier. How could you violate my privacy like that? Olivia, I honestly don't know what you're talking about. What messages? She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out how much I knew, how much she could still deny. Someone sent them emails with personal information about me, about my friendship with Graham. Your friendship? I let a note of suspicion creep into my voice. What kind of friendship requires privacy? And that's when she made her first mistake. Instead of coming clean, instead of apologizing, she doubled down. Graham and I work closely together. Sometimes we discuss personal things, private things, but it's not what it looks like. I nodded slowly. So you're saying these emails your parents received were taken out of context? Exactly. And Graham's wife? Did she get emails too? Olivia's face went pale. His wife? You mentioned my parents got emails. I just wondered if other people did too. She sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. Daniel, I think someone is trying to cause trouble for me at work. Maybe a competitor or someone who doesn't like that I got promoted last year. I almost admired the creativity. Almost. That's terrible, honey. What can we do to help? She looked at me with something that might have been hope. You believe me? Of course I believe you. You're my wife. But even as I said it, I was already planning my next move. The next morning, Olivia left for work early. She was probably hoping to get to the office before the HR email made its rounds, maybe do some damage control. She was too late. I knew this because I'd done some social engineering the day before. A quick call to Morrison & Associates, claiming to be from their IT support company, had gotten me the email address of Janet Mills, the office gossip who worked in accounting. I'd sent her the juiciest screenshots with a note. Thought you should know what's really going on in the executive suite. By 9 a.m., my phone was buzzing with text messages from Olivia. They're calling me into HR. Someone leaked private information to the whole office. I might lose my job. We need to talk tonight. I replied to each one with supportive husband messages. I'm so sorry this is happening. We'll figure it out together. I love you. Around lunchtime, Pete came over with sandwiches and beer. You look pretty cheerful for a guy whose wife's having an affair, he observed. Do I? I've been trying to stay positive. Pete grinned. What's the next move? I showed him the screenshots I'd prepared for Phase 2. Graham thinks he's untouchable because he's got money and connections. Time to test that theory. That afternoon, I drove to Cherry Hills Village and parked across from the Ryder mansion. It was exactly the kind of house Olivia dreamed about, massive, perfectly landscaped, with a circular driveway and fountain in front. At 3:15, Patricia Ryder's Tesla pulled into the driveway. She got out slowly, like she was carrying a heavy weight. Even from a distance, I could see she'd been crying. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Patricia Ryder. We need to talk. I texted back. I'm sorry for what you're going through. Meet me at Starbucks on University in an hour. I'll be wearing a red scarf. Patricia Ryder was elegant in the way that only comes from money and breeding. She was probably 50, with perfectly styled blonde hair and the kind of understated jewelry that costs more than most people's cars. But her eyes were red-rimmed, and her hands shook slightly as she held her coffee. You're Daniel Lake, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, ma'am. How long have you known? I found out Tuesday night. You? She laughed bitterly. I've suspected for months. Graham's been distant, working late, taking mysterious phone calls. But seeing it in writing... She trailed off. I'm sorry. I know this is painful. Are you? Sorry, I mean. She studied my face. You could have just divorced her quietly. Why involve the rest of us? It was a fair question. Because they weren't just having an affair. They were laughing at us, making jokes about how stupid we were, how easy we were to fool. Graham was bragging to his friends about his conquest. Your husband has been telling people at his country club that he's got a hot young mistress who thinks he's going to leave his boring wife for her. Patricia's composure cracked. He said that? I showed her the screenshots. Graham's messages to his golf buddies, forwarded by Olivia with crying, laughing emojis. The casual cruelty of it, the complete lack of respect for either of their spouses. I want him destroyed, Patricia said quietly. I can help with that. Patricia Ryder turned out to be a formidable ally. She had access to Graham's personal accounts, his schedule, his social circle. More importantly, she had 30 years of marriage's worth of ammunition. Graham has been skimming money from the company, she told me over our second coffee meeting. Small amounts, but consistent. He thinks I don't know, but I've been tracking our finances for years. How much are we talking about? Maybe $50,000 over the past 2 years. He's been billing personal expenses to client accounts, inflating his travel costs, that sort of thing. It's not enough to put him in prison, but it's enough to ruin his reputation. We spent the afternoon planning. Patricia would gather financial documentation while I worked on the technical side. She wanted Graham publicly humiliated. I wanted Olivia to understand that actions have consequences. That evening, Olivia came home looking defeated. Morrison and Associates had suspended her pending an investigation into workplace harassment allegations. Not because she was the victim, but because she was the willing participant in a relationship that violated company policy. They're treating me like I'm some kind of predator, she complained. Graham's the one in charge. He's the one who pursued me. Is that true? I asked. She looked at me sharply. Of course it's true. You don't think I would just... I'm not that kind of person. What kind of person? The kind who breaks up marriages. Who cheats. She was crying now, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. So Graham seduced you? Yes. No. It's complicated, Daniel. You wouldn't understand. Try me. She sat down across from me at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together, where we'd paid bills and planned vacations and talked about maybe having kids someday. Graham makes me feel special, she said. Important. When I'm with him, I'm not just some middle-class housewife from Colorado. I'm sophisticated, glamorous. He takes me to places where people know wine and art and literature. And I don't make you feel special? She looked away. You're a good man, Daniel, but you're... comfortable, safe. Graham is exciting. Exciting enough to throw away 15 years of marriage? I wasn't throwing anything away. I was just exploring. That night, after Olivia went to bed, I sent out the next round of emails. Graham's country club, the exclusive Cherry Hills Country Club, prided itself on discretion and respectability. Members paid enormous fees to associate with the right kind of people, the kind who didn't have messy public scandals. I sent the club's board of directors a carefully crafted email detailing Graham's affair, including his boasts about conducting business meetings at hotels where he was actually meeting his mistress. I included copies of credit card statements showing him billing the club for client entertainment on days when he was with Olivia. The Denver Business Journal received a more detailed package. Graham had been featured in their 40 under 40 list a few years back, and they loved a good fall from grace story. I sent them everything: the affair, the financial irregularities, the abuse of company resources. But the real masterstroke was social media. I created a fake Instagram account called Denver Business Truth and started posting screenshots of Graham's most arrogant messages. The ones where he bragged about his conquests, made crude jokes about his wife, and detailed his plans to trade up to a younger model while keeping Patricia around for her money and social connections. Each post was carefully crafted to go viral. I tagged relevant Denver business accounts, used trending hashtags, and posted at optimal times for engagement. Within 48 hours, Denver Business Truth had 5,000 followers, and Graham Ryder was trending on local Twitter. The comments were brutal. "This guy is disgusting. His poor wife." Imagine being married to this narcissist for 30 years. Someone should send this to his company. This is sexual harassment. I know this guy. Total sleaze. Not surprised at all. Olivia was getting her own dose of social media attention. Someone had identified her as the other woman and posted her LinkedIn profile alongside screenshots of her messages. Her professional headshot was being shared with comments like homewrecker and gold digger. She came home Friday evening in tears. "My career is over," she said. "No one will hire me after this. My reputation is destroyed." "I'm sure it will blow over," I said, not meaning a word of it. "No, it won't. Someone is systematically destroying my life. First my parents, then work, now this social media campaign. Someone has it out for me." She looked at me suspiciously. "Daniel, I need you to be honest with me. Did you do this?" I met her eyes steadily. "Honey, I barely know how to use Instagram. You think I could orchestrate some kind of social media campaign?" It was technically true. I'd learned how to use Instagram specifically for this purpose. Then who? Maybe Patricia Ryder? If she found out about you and Graham, she might want revenge. Olivia considered this. She's got the money to hire someone, a private investigator or something. That makes sense. What are you going to do? I don't know. Graham won't return my calls. HR says I'm probably going to be fired. My parents aren't speaking to me. She looked at me with something like desperation. At least I still have you. I put my arms around her and held her while she cried. Of course you do. For better or worse, right? But I was already planning the final act. Saturday morning, I got a text from Pete. "Your wife's boyfriend is at Murphy's pub. Looks like he's been drinking. Thought you might want to know." Murphy's was a dive bar near downtown, the kind of place where nobody cared about your problems, and the whiskey was cheap. Not exactly Graham Ryder's usual scene. I found him at the end of the bar, still wearing an expensive suit, but looking like he'd slept in it. His perfectly styled hair was disheveled, and he needed a shave. "Daniel Lake," he said when he saw me. His voice was slurred. "Come to gloat?" I ordered a beer and sat down next to him. "Actually, I came to talk." "Talk about what? How you destroyed my life?" "I didn't destroy anything, Graham. I just shined a light on what was already there." He turned to face me, and I could see the rage building behind his bloodshot eyes. "You self-righteous little prick. You have no idea what you've done." "Enlighten me." "Patricia's filing for divorce. She's taking half of everything, including my stake in the company. The country club is reviewing my membership. Morrison and Associates is conducting an audit of all my accounts." He took a long drink. 30 years of building a reputation, gone in a week. Must be tough. You know what the funny thing is? I wasn't even going to leave Patricia for your wife. Olivia was just entertainment, a distraction. She thought she was going to be the next Mrs. Graham Ryder, but she was never more than a side piece. Something cold settled in my chest. "You led her on." I told her what she wanted to hear. Women like Olivia, they're desperate to believe they're special. Tell them they deserve better, that they're too good for their boring husbands, and they'll do anything for you. He was drunk enough to be honest, and what he was saying made me angrier than anything in the messages had. So you used her. We used each other. She got to feel sophisticated and desirable. I got to screw a younger woman who thought I was amazing. Fair trade. That's when I made my decision. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Say that again, Graham. What? What you just said about my wife, about how you used her. He squinted at my phone, then laughed. You recording me? What are you going to do, post it online? Maybe. Go ahead. What's left of my reputation can handle one more hit. He leaned closer to the phone. Your wife is a naive little gold digger who thought she could sleep her way into a better life. I never had any intention of leaving my wife for her. She was just easy. I stopped recording. Thanks. For what? For showing me exactly who you are. I left him at the bar and drove home. Olivia was in the living room, laptop open, probably looking for jobs or trying to do damage control on social media. Where were you? She asked. I ran into Graham at Murphy's pub. Her head snapped up. You talked to Graham? What did he say? I sat down across from her and pulled out my phone. He said a lot of things. Want to hear? I played the recording, watched her face go through a series of emotions. Confusion, hurt, anger, humiliation. He's drunk, she said when it was over. He doesn't mean that. Doesn't he? She was quiet for a long time. Then, even if he does mean it, that doesn't excuse what you've done to me, to us. What I've done? Don't pretend you're innocent, Daniel. I know you're behind all of this. The emails, the social media, all of it. You've systematically destroyed my life. I nodded. You're right. She blinked, clearly not expecting me to admit it. What? You're absolutely right. I found your messages, and I decided to make sure everyone else knew what kind of person you really are. What kind of person am I, Daniel? The kind who throws away 15 years of marriage for a man who just called you a naive gold digger. The kind who makes jokes about her husband to her lover. The kind who thinks she deserves better than the man who supported her dreams, co-signed her loans, and loved her unconditionally for over a decade. She was crying again, but this time I felt no sympathy. I made a mistake, she said. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake, Olivia. This was a choice. Dozens of choices. Every text you sent, every lie you told, every time you came home from being with him and kissed me goodnight, those were all choices. So what now? You've gotten your revenge. You've humiliated me publicly, destroyed my career, turned my family against me. Are you happy? I considered the question. You know what? I actually am. The divorce papers arrived on Monday morning. Olivia had hired Richard Blackstone, one of Denver's most expensive divorce attorneys. Apparently her parents had decided to fund her legal battle, probably hoping to minimize their own embarrassment. The papers were aggressive. Olivia was claiming emotional abuse, demanding alimony, and asking for half of everything, including my retirement accounts and the house. I called my own lawyer, Jennifer Walsh, a no-nonsense woman who specialized in men's rights cases. This is pretty standard, Jennifer said after reviewing the papers. She's starting high, hoping to negotiate down. The emotional abuse claim is interesting, though. What's that about? I told her about the social media campaign and the leaked emails. Jennifer whistled. You documented her affair thoroughly, but she's going to argue that your response was disproportionate and abusive. A judge might see it that way. What are my options? Well, Colorado is a no-fault divorce state, so the affair itself doesn't matter much for property division. But if we can prove she was planning to defraud you or hide assets... That's when I remembered Patricia's information about Graham's financial irregularities. I called Patricia that afternoon. I need a favor. What kind of favor? Olivia's divorce lawyer is claiming I'm abusive because I exposed the affair. I need something that shows she was planning to leave me anyway, something that proves this wasn't just a fling. I might have something. Graham kept a journal on his computer. I copied it before he changed all his passwords. We met at a coffee shop in Littleton, far from both our neighborhoods. Patricia handed me a flash drive. Graham's been planning this for months, she said. He and Olivia talked about how to maximize what she could get in a divorce. There are entries about hiding assets, claiming abuse, even faking therapy records. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop and started reading. It was worse than I'd imagined. Graham had been coaching Olivia on how to manipulate the divorce proceedings. They'd discussed moving money into accounts I didn't know about, claiming I was controlling and emotionally abusive, and even staging incidents that would support her claims. One entry from 3 months ago made my blood boil. Olivia is worried that Daniel is getting suspicious. I told her to start documenting abusive behavior. Nothing physical, but she can claim he's controlling about money, that he monitors her activities, that he's been increasingly angry and paranoid. Build a paper trail that supports emotional abuse. Her lawyer says judges are sympathetic to women in these situations. Another entry from 2 months ago. Helped Olivia open a separate account at First National. She's been slowly moving money there from their joint savings. Small amounts, nothing Daniel would notice. By the time she files, she should have about $30,000 hidden away. I copied everything and drove straight to Jennifer's office. This changes everything, Jennifer said after reviewing the files. This isn't just adultery, it's fraud. She's been systematically planning to defraud you with the help of her lover. What can we do with it? We can file a countersuit. Fraud, theft, conspiracy. We can also use this to support a claim that she's been the abusive party in this marriage. Financial abuse, emotional manipulation, gaslighting. Will it work? Jennifer smiled. Oh, it'll work. But Daniel, you need to be prepared. When we file this countersuit, it's going to get ugly. Really ugly. Uglier than having my marriage destroyed by my wife and her boss? Point taken. The countersuit hit like a bomb. Jennifer filed it on a Friday afternoon, and by Monday morning, Olivia's lawyer was calling for a meeting. We met at Jennifer's office. Olivia looked terrible, pale, thin, with dark circles under her eyes. Richard Blackstone was exactly what I'd expected. Silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who charged $500 an hour to intimidate people. This is harassment, Blackstone began. Mr. Lake is continuing his pattern of abusive behavior by filing frivolous counterclaims. Jennifer slid a folder across the table. Mr. Blackstone, I think you should review these documents before you continue. I watched Olivia's face as her lawyer read Graham's journal entries. She went from pale to green to red as the full scope of the evidence became clear. Where did you get these? Blackstone asked. That's not relevant, Jennifer replied. What's relevant is that your client has been engaged in systematic fraud and theft. She's hidden marital assets, planned to commit perjury in her divorce filings, and conspired with her lover to defraud my client. Blackstone whispered something to Olivia. She shook her head violently. My client denies these allegations, Blackstone said, but his heart wasn't in it. Your client can deny whatever she wants, Jennifer said. But we have bank records showing the hidden account, we have her lover's own words describing their conspiracy, and we have documentation of her plans to commit perjury. If this goes to trial, she's not just looking at losing the divorce, she's looking at criminal charges. The room was quiet for a long moment. What do you want? Blackstone finally asked. Jennifer looked at me. We'd discussed this scenario. Mrs. Lake withdraws her divorce petition, I said. She moves out of the marital home immediately. She makes no claim to any marital assets, including retirement accounts, the house, or any other property. She returns the money she's hidden in the separate account. In exchange, I won't pursue criminal charges for theft and fraud. That's ridiculous, Olivia said, speaking for the first time. I'm not walking away with nothing. You're not walking away with nothing, I replied. You're walking away with your freedom, because the alternative is explaining to a judge why you conspired to defraud your husband while committing adultery with your boss. Blackstone whispered to Olivia again. This conversation went on longer. We need time to consider this offer, Blackstone said. You have 48 hours, Jennifer replied. After that, we're filing criminal complaints. As they left, Olivia turned back to me. I never thought you had this in you. Neither did I. Olivia signed the agreement on Wednesday morning. She moved out that afternoon, taking only her personal belongings and her car, which still had 2 years of payments left on it. I watched from the living room window as she loaded boxes into her BMW. 15 years of marriage, reduced to a few carloads of stuff. Pete came over with beer and pizza to help me celebrate. So what's next? He asked. I'm thinking about selling the house. Too many memories. Maybe get something smaller, closer to downtown. What about work? Jennifer thinks I have a good case for a lawsuit against Morrison and Associates. They enabled the harassment by allowing Graham to use company resources for his affair. Could be a nice settlement. Pete grinned. You've thought of everything. Not everything, but enough. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Patricia Ryder. Graham and I are getting divorced. I wanted to thank you for giving me the courage to leave him. I texted back, I'm glad you're free of him. Would you like to have dinner sometime, as friends? I think we understand each other. I looked around the empty house, at the spaces where Olivia's things used to be. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. I'd like that, I texted back. Epilogue. 6 months later, I sold the house in January and bought a condo downtown with a view of the mountains. Patricia and I had been dating for 3 months. Nothing serious, just two people who understood what it meant to be betrayed by someone you trusted. Graham Ryder had been fired from Morrison and Associates after the financial audit revealed the extent of his embezzlement. He was facing criminal charges and professional sanctions. Last I heard, he was working for a small marketing firm in Colorado Springs and living in a studio apartment. Olivia had moved back in with her parents temporarily. She'd found a job at a small advertising agency for about half her previous salary. According to mutual friends, she was in therapy and claiming to have learned from her mistakes. I didn't care what she was doing. The lawsuit against Morrison and Associates settled for $150,000. Jennifer said I could have gotten more if I'd been willing to go to trial, but I was ready to move on. On a sunny Saturday in February, I was having coffee with Patricia when my phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. I know you'll probably delete this, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I was selfish and cruel, and I destroyed something beautiful. I hope you're happy. I showed Patricia the message. Are you going to respond? She asked. I thought about it for a moment, then deleted the message without replying. Some things don't deserve a response, I said. Patricia smiled. I like that philosophy. We finished our coffee and walked out into the bright Colorado sunshine. Behind us, my phone buzzed again, but I didn't check it. I was done looking backward. For the first time in years, I was genuinely excited about what came next. Daniel Lake, the boring IT guy who shopped at Target and couldn't keep his wife interested, was gone. In his place was someone stronger, smarter, and much less willing to be taken for granted. I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting better.